And he was an avid outdoorsman. So he knew all these little places. And I realized all of a sudden while we're walking out on this very dilapidated pier, it's just me and him, and I can't see lights, and there's nobody around. And he walks me all the way to the end, and he gets down on his knees, and he just begins to cry, and he starts telling me that he's not doing this to me, that someone must be breaking in my window at night, and that he would never hurt me. And my internal instinct was like, I better agree or I might not come back from here.
Welcome to the show, LC.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I'm happy to have made this acquaintance with you. I love the show. I love what you're putting out there, and I'm just super honored to be here, man.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. Yeah, you reached out. I guess you had found one of the episodes, and then you had messaged me that about like, was it Courtney's? I think was it around Courtney's?
I can't even remember I watched a few of them right in a row, and it was right after I had interviewed Kim Bellis with Sober is the New Cool on my podcast, and I just had there were so many great new people. Have you noticed, like, on social media, when you hook up with like one awesome person, a load of awesome people come out, and so all of a
Yep.
sudden there you were, man, and I was like, it's exciting. So,
Yeah.
I watched a few of the shows, and then you sent me one with a guest that I thoroughly enjoyed. And so, yeah,
Oh, Jill. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because and we'll even get into the similarities.
yeah.
Eventually. So what is? We'll start with what is your sober date?
My sober date is April the 18th of 2013. I
Okay.
mean,
All
yeah,
right.
year eight, man.
Year 8. Look at you go. Now, what was going on for you in April 2013 to where you changed your life around?
Well, I tell you,
Like, did you get
April,
arrested? You know what I mean? Was there like an inciting incident? Like, like,
well, there was the year before. See, I was already in outpatient treatment at that time. But I was still dabbling. Like, I was still dabbling. And so on April the 18th of 2013, I had been in an outpatient program for a year, and I already had like this big aha moment that I needed a recovery program, not just a try to get clean and sober type thing. Like, I needed a healing program, and I was in the midst of it, but I was still back and forth. So I was smoking weed, and my wife was in the middle of a heroin relapse, and she had gone to an inpatient treatment. It was just me and my son there. And I had found myself smoking weed as if it were heroin. And I sat down with this dime bag of weed, and I put it on a plate and was doing my thing with it. And then I had this internal conversation with my son in my mind. And I just sat there with the plate, and I said, okay, man, I did the best I could. Because of this, we're going to be able to stay in this house maybe 3 more months. I've had a hard life, man, and I want the best for you. And I tried not to be a hypocrite, and I really tried to change my life, but I'm too far gone. And because I'm going to continue to $10 this to death, you're going to have to probably go live with relatives. And this is, that's going to be that. And I love you. I really do. And this has nothing to do with you. And I'm sorry. And it was just that internal dialogue, thinking to have to go upstairs and tell my son, who was already without his mom right then. He had a dad that was very, in another state, that was just not present in his life. And so it was just me and him. And I thought, I can't do that. Like, I started this recovery journey because I didn't want to be a hypocrite to him. And so right now, I'm going to call this day, April the 18th of 2013, my sober date. And from that moment on, I have not touched another substance. I've, been following and creating a program of my own, and I've just been in it every single day since.
That's
Every day.
awesome. So you had, basically just a spiritual awakening that day.
It was.
You had
Yeah.
that moment of clarity of,
Yeah.
wait, it's like we wake up,
Yeah.
it's like we finally, it's like we come to, and it's like, what the fuck am I doing?
Right. Right. That's the honest truth, man, because it was so clear in that moment. It was like, really? You're gonna do all this over weed? It's like, man, you've been off heroin, and shit. The shit that was gonna kill you. You've been off that, man, for a year, and you're just gonna give it all up over weed? No,
Now,
we're not going out like that.
and because that let's backtrack some more then. So I think I read somewhere 22 years of addiction.
Oh
Because
yeah,
you have a YouTube page. So I think like
yeah,
your description says something like battled for addiction for
yeah,
22 years
yeah,
before
man,
you got sober. So
yeah.
you're talking, how old are you, LC?
I'll be 48 Monday.
48
So
Monday. Well, happy
yeah,
birthday Monday.
thank you,
And
man. Appreciate it.
so you got into drugs then at 18.
Well, actually, I started drinking when I was 11.
Oh, me
Um,
too.
yeah, I saw that in one of our videos. I said, yeah, we got some stuff in common. Yeah, man,
Yeah.
I started drinking at 11 and heavy because my dad, who I only met when I was 8,
Should we give the spoiler alert to the crowd, to the audience that doesn't already know you?
oh, yeah, yeah, we
So I mean,
can.
when you were 11 and drinking,
Yeah, I was a
you were
girl.
you
Like
were a girl.
I was physically a girl inside a boy and desperate for my dad to see me as his son. And so, and whenever we were drinking together, because that's what he'd do on the
So
weekends,
you had no, were you an only child
I wasn't an only child. He actually had the son that he wanted, you
after
know,
you?
after me.
But
So
still, but when you were born, it was like, oh, I wanted a son.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, that was very much known. And then when I was 2, he left. And they did had this thing between the parents where he gave up his rights to me so that he could start over with his new family. And I was stuck with my mom, who was a young teenage girl who was outrunning her family with all these monsters of men. And so she was marrying one after the other, and
Where
they
did
were
you grow
awful.
up? Where did you
I
grow
grew
up?
up in South Alabama.
Okay, so that's a small area then. For you can't really
Very.
run far.
No.
And I say that because I understand the circuit. My wife, who right now watching this or listening, is shaking her head in the green. When she was born, her name is Michael,
Wow.
Michel. And
Yeah.
when I call it in, people, she doesn't like talking on the phone. She gets all, so I always call like the cable company as
Yeah.
her and say, yeah, Michael,
Get that.
because she doesn't, they don't know, and it's always they
Yeah.
always get confused with me. Like whenever I call the doctors, like, oh, I'm calling for my wife Michael, and they're
Yeah.
like, my wife Michael, but she goes by Mikey,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mykee is what she came up with herself. But
Yeah. That's
still, her
cool.
dad left her, when she was like 1, and then started a family with another woman on the other side of town,
Yep.
where
Yep.
he got his sons. And she never saw him really ever again. He ended up dying
Wow.
eventually.
Wow.
The karma came back though, because he never officially divorced her mom.
Oh
So
wow.
when he died, guess what? The pension, like his social security,
Wow.
all went to her and not to
Yeah.
his current girlfriend of 30 some
Ah.
years
Now
that he had a
that's
family
karma.
with. That is
That's
karma.
karma. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yes, it
Yeah, so
is.
so that was my, and now all of us, and then that's how that works out sometimes. So, but I can
Yes.
see how that happens, especially when you're like, she's 38, you're 48. Back in the 80s, it was a lot easier for men to just
Yes.
leave their
Oh yeah.
families. One of my favorite comedians is this guy Sam Morrill. He's a New York City comedian, and he talks about how his dad started a family 2 blocks down in New York City. Like, and he had no idea for 18 years that his dad was 2 blocks away. His mom finally was walking down the street. He's like, "Oh yeah, your dad lives there." He's like, "You've known this whole time?" Yeah, I didn't want to upset you, Sammy. Like, it's like a joke of his. So I totally get. So like, where
It's
now? What was
wild,
your name?
man.
I got to know what was your name, and you knew that you needed to be a boy. You are a guy.
Oh yeah, man. I knew it when I was 4 years old. Like I knew that something just was amiss. Like I knew that my mind inside did not match my body, and I only realized there were differences because my grandfather was like my best friend. And so at bath time, I wouldn't take a bath. I didn't do anything without him. So he'd throw his swim trunks on and get in the bathtub, and we'd play and everything. And I remember having this conversation with him about why he had to have, swimming trunks on. And he, started telling me, well, because we're different, you're a girl, and I'm a man, and I'm grown, and all that stuff. And I just remember thinking, but no, that's not right. No, because really, I'm a boy, and I knew that I was. And then about a year later, my mom had married this much older man that I look back now and know that he groomed her to abuse me. He was
We
definitely a
didn't
predator.
we
Yeah.
didn't yeah, and we didn't know what grooming was
Yeah.
until
No.
recently.
No.
You know what I mean? It's
Absolutely. Yes.
now you look back and you're like, Charlie Chaplin was grooming
Oh,
people, and
yeah.
but you don't know that shit
Yeah, you
then.
don't. No,
And then
you
now
don't.
we look back and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I totally see it
Yeah.
because, I've had, I don't know if you know Tiffany Hamilton. She's a big creator on TikTok. She's got
Oh,
like
I'll have to look.
250,000 followers on TikTok. But
Oh, look.
she's Canadian. She has a podcast called Never Alone Support. And she talks in her podcast about how her stepdad was her boyfriend from 3 to 15,
Wow.
and how
Bravo to her.
her mom just like was okay with it, kind of
Wow.
thing. And her mom was, and I said, it sounds like your mom was sought after because she had a 1-year-old baby with no dad in the picture,
Yep.
and he sought after her
Yeah.
and then groomed you, and then all of a sudden you didn't know any different growing up. You
Yeah.
just thought this is how it was. Everyone has their boyfriend as their stepdad.
Okay. Yeah.
And how is it weird for you? And now she talks about it all the time, and she's
Good
not
for
shy
her.
about it, and she's
Bravo
sober,
for
and
her.
she's sober too. She would be a great
Mm.
guest for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna look
She's
into
on
her.
TikTok and Instagram. I'll link you
Okay.
up. I'm all
Cool.
about linking up,
Please.
people together,
Yeah, me
especially
too.
when we have shows like this. Her show too,
Yes.
where she could talk to you about what you dealt with.
Yeah,
So,
man, that's
because
amazing.
how old were you when that started happening with you, like your new stepdad?
I
Was
was
he your
5 years
stepdad?
old. Yeah, yeah. He ended up being my stepdad, and I
Huh.
was 5 years old. And so it went on until I was 11. And I finally told when I was 11. And I mean, when I say this man was like a monster, like he was really messed up. He was a Vietnam veteran. He had gone through a lot of abuse in his own life, seeing his mom murdered and different things. So, like, there was a part of me that felt sorry for him. Like, as a young child, I felt sorry for what he was doing to me because I knew that something wasn't right. But he was a man that you had to be, you learned to fear for your life because he could snap out. I learned to count the beers. This was how I knew what kind of night it was, because kids develop these amazing survival techniques that are, I mean, they rival any damn movie you can watch. Kids develop how to survive. And I remember being able to count the beers to know how quiet I needed to be, how, unseen I needed to be, and then try to just kind of not be there. And so I was 5. I told when I was 11, but he had done things in a way that when my mom took me to this doctor, the doctor never asked me what happened. She did her own examinations, and she had a criteria of, well, did he do this, this, or this? And the honest truth was he had not done those things, but she never asked me what he did do. And so from that moment, she goes back and tells my mom that it didn't happen. And so here's my mom, who's, I think, 27 at the time, and this man's like close to 50. And she's in her own space trying to survive because he'd almost killed her in front of me several times. So he comes home, she tells him what's been said, and he takes me out. And at night after work, he takes me out to this abandoned pier on the Mobile Bay. So we're from a little town called Daphne, Alabama. So sits right on the Mobile Bay. And he was an avid outdoorsman. So he knew all these little places. And I realized all of a sudden, while we're walking out on this very dilapidated pier, it's just me and him, and I can't see lights, and there's nobody around. And he walks me all the way to the end, and he gets down on his knees, and he just begins to cry, and he starts telling me that he's not doing this to me, that someone must be breaking in my window at night, and that he would never hurt me. And my internal instinct was like, I better agree or I might not come back from here. And so in that moment, I mean, I just remember going, you're right. Somebody must be breaking in at night. And, and you're right. Because I just wanted to go
Did
back.
he ever do it again?
He never did it again. He
I
tried a few times, but he never did it again.
I think he definitely got scared.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think he definitely got scared and realized how lucky he got that
Yeah.
he skated out of that one. And
Yeah.
I think he
Yeah.
realized you're not just some dumb 5-year-old girl anymore,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you're gonna talk,
Yeah.
and I better stop this or she's gonna keep fucking talking.
Yeah.
I say she. I'm not
Yeah.
being disrespectful. I'm
No, I
just
get it.
in the
No, no,
moment.
for sure. Yeah.
I'm all about pronoun. Like you can see behind
Nah,
me, like I'm
yeah, I
all
feel.
about like so like all about. But anyway, I
But
can
that's who I
totally.
was then. Yeah.
How long did they stay together after that?
Not very long, but they
Okay.
didn't leave for me. I had a small sister that my mom had with him, and she was 6 years younger than me, and she had been standing up on the table and flipped off the back and hurt herself. And there had been an incident like that a few months before, and she had ended up, he told mom, don't touch her, and she ended up having a broken collarbone, and she had to lay there all night with this broken collarbone. And my mom vowed never again. Well, this big day, my sister flips off the table again. He yells at my mom not to touch her, and my mom stands up. She's had enough. And she stands up, and then the shit really hits the fan. He throws this bowl of mashed potatoes, then he gets up and he comes at her. And my mom's about 5 foot, all of 5 foot. I think at that time she weighed 97 pounds, and he was a 6 foot tall man, big man. And I just remember him bearing his fist back and hitting her twice with two like roundhouse rights. And I just remember her standing there and her just taking those punches and never moving, like she had had enough. And that's the day that we left. And after that, I mean, that was probably a year that we went to my grandparents' house, and we would sleep in the hallway because he would leave bullets in the mailbox with our names on them every morning. And he was such a, he was a special forces guy. So we were in constant fear for the longest time. And I'm pretty sure that's why my mom got married again pretty quickly after that,
Protection.
because my grandparents just kind of said,
This is
yeah,
a
y'all move here, and then
this
they
is a roof.
left.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
a yeah.
that's it. Like, yeah. And
Oh, we
so
got
that
is
was
four
a
walls and
lot.
a roof for you guys. That's
Yeah,
it.
here you
Yeah.
go. Be
And
good, be
but
happy.
that wasn't long after though. That
Yeah,
like
yeah.
so like the whole entire like the pier incident to that incident. How long do you think that was?
I'd say that was maybe, gosh, looking back on it, maybe it was 6 months.
Do you
I think,
think that had anything to do with think about the but no, but
I
I
don't
know
know.
but do you think
I don't know.
like I because I look into things like I wonder about the sexual tension, not sexual frustration.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
because his usual thing that he's playing, you know what I mean, like
yeah, yeah.
is not there,
Never
and
thought
then
of,
so he's getting more and more frustrated and upset. So
never
there's a
thought of it.
boiling point that you hit.
Yeah. Never thought of it that way, man. That's a great point because, I always looked at it from like my mom's point of view, but I never looked at it from like his point of view
How
in
long
that
after did he
way.
pass away?
He just passed away this past year.
Okay, I knew he
So,
was. I just by the way you were talking about him, I knew that he died eventually. I
yeah.
just didn't know
Yeah.
how
So
long it
here where
was.
I thought I'd gone through a very active forgiveness. And I do think that I did go, because forgiveness, I believe in some cases is a process, and there's many phases to it. And in like my third year of recovery, I really started working on that one. And then when he got sick this past year, because about 6 years ago, he sent um all of his children, my sister, and he had two sons, and he sent me $1,000 check, and he wrote me this letter. But in the letter, it just talked about addiction and how we're selfish when we're in our addictions and different things. And he never took any responsibility for what he did in my
Just
life.
explained it.
Yeah, yeah, just pretty much
We'll
said,
give
well,
you
you
some
know how we
bullet point.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some general roundabout statement.
Listen,
And
this is the best you're gonna get from a
oh yeah,
Vietnam vet, so just
oh you
take
better
it
believe
and
it. Absolutely, absolutely,
and
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
almost fitting though because we're recording this on Sunday, the 16th or whatever, right? Or yeah,
Yep,
but tomorrow's your
yep,
birthday, the 17th, right?
yep, yep.
Well, and I don't know what kind of fellowship you're into, but I read Just for Today every single day,
Really?
and I read it like as a daily show with this other podcast
Oh yeah, yeah,
creator,
yeah. Saw
and
that.
yeah,
Saw
and
that.
we
Yeah.
already pre-recorded for tomorrow, and so I already know that tomorrow's is for forgiveness. So
Wow.
that's tomorrow's Just for Today on January
Wow.
17th is actually all
Wow.
every year on your birthday. Just for
That's
Today
wild.
is about forgiveness,
That
and
that is
so
profound.
so
That's
every year on your
profound.
birthday, you're coming up. You're like, I got to be forgiving before I
Yeah.
got to forgive them before they forgive me. So
Amen to that, man.
so I'm
That's
glad.
pretty profound. That's
Yeah,
profound.
yeah, I like to find that, that weird little shit and give to
Yeah,
people
me
where
too.
I can
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm always looking
That's
for the
really cool.
weird and
Oh
the
yeah,
not
man.
not obvious. Okay,
Yeah,
so
man.
now you're 11 years old, 12 years old. How is this new dad?
Oh, he's an asshole, man. Like he's one extreme to the other. He doesn't Now this one doesn't sexually abuse us, but he is very emotionally and physically abusive. It's
Which I've
yeah.
heard can be even worse
Oh, I
than
thought
the
it was worse.
physical, because the
Yeah.
physical, you at least know what's going to happen to you
Yes.
physically, and the
Yes.
mental part of it stays with you all day long. The physical
Oh
part,
yeah.
like you said, you can count the beers, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you could count. Well, if he has 8 beers, then it's only going to take him 8 minutes. If it's
Yep.
9 beers, it's going to be this
Yep.
long,
Yep.
and I just need to
Absolutely.
get through it because it
Yes.
sounds like you were a very like. I'm gonna get through this because I'm a people pleaser. That's why
Yeah.
on the pier,
Yep.
you just said, "Yup, I'm a dumb girl," and "Yup,
Yep.
somebody was coming through my window." You were
That's right.
that's
Yep.
survival.
Yep.
So, but when it's the mental thing, you can't escape that.
You
You
never know when
can't
it's going to
count
happen.
because it's going
Yeah.
to creep up. You could be brushing your teeth, and it's going to creep
Yes.
up in your head, and that's why it's more fucked, and it
Yeah.
stays with you longer because you don't know when it's. You could be in
You
school
don't.
and it's fucking with you. It's all
Yeah.
day long. It's the mental anguish. Like you're not thinking about your other stepdad abusing you. That's when he's drunk when you're in school because you're safe in school.
Right.
But the
Right.
mental one that fucks with you mentally, you are thinking about that in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. That tells you you're stupid or you're fat or you can't do this or I mean it was yeah. I mean I felt like he was more of a monster than the last one because of those things
Did
and
you
he
have
was
body
super
image
hard.
issues too as
Oh
a
my
girl?
God. Oh
Because
my
being
God.
a girl in the 80s and 90s is
Oh.
girls today, yeah, okay, now listen, it's the extremes. It's like your stepdads. So the girls today have the extreme of social media, but the
Yes.
girls of you and my wife that you guys dealt with was more like, oh, look at the girls on Friends. Why
Oh
can't you
yeah.
be as skinny as them? Why can't you have the
Oh
hair like
man.
them? Why can't
Oh
you look
man.
like them in the magazine and tabloids? And
Oh, it was terrible.
so I
It's
get
terrible.
that's why it's a spectrum too of that, the
Mhm.
extremes of
Yeah.
how bad it is to be a girl today with social media and the likes and the pressures, and I get that, and the online bullying. I totally
Yeah,
see it. I
man.
hear you. It's valid. I get it. But we had to deal with some crazy shit too that
Oh
was
yeah.
mentally torturing, because guess what? You can at least escape in your phone to a different app. You can
Right.
go into solitaire and escape for an
Right.
hour. You can go
Right.
and play this game and escape. There was no
Yeah.
escaping the mental anguish because we didn't have the
No.
distraction at our fingertips.
No, and also now you can find other people like you. Back then, you couldn't
There
just
was no
dial up.
tribe. There was no
No.
tribe. It's like
No,
Jill said. I mean, you watched Jill. Jill didn't
uh-huh.
figure out
Yeah.
that trans was even a thing until 2010. And she
Man,
was like,
it was
that's what
late for
I
me.
am. That's
I
what I
know.
am.
I know. Like
And we'll
I
get
didn't
there.
know
We'll
it
get
had a
there.
name until Chaz Bono came out in the 90s about, transitioning, becoming a man. And I was like, holy shit, it can be done. Like I didn't even know it could be done or it had a name. I always tagged myself God's little joke because I was like, how in the hell do you put this? And we're talking about 11, 12 years old. My body was like turning against me. All of a sudden, like I'm being forced to wear bras, and this was the epitome of like death for me. And then let's don't talk about that monthly thing that comes on for girls. I never wanted to leave the house. Like I thought, this can't be happening to me. This has got to be the worst thing ever. Cause I'm like, I'm a boy.
So okay, so now you're like this guy's an asshole, and school was tough for you, I'm sure.
Oh my God.
Like now,
Awful.
and the body image issues you were having, is it because you were a bigger girl, or were you like trying to be skinnier or too skinny?
Well, the thing is I realized, like when I was younger, while the sexual abuse was going on, I equated sex, and I kind of knew that's what was happening, sex with attraction. So I thought that if I made myself unattractive, it would stop. So I began gaining a lot of weight. So I was a large child. I had to, of course, ask him if I could cut my hair off because my hair was really long. My mom left it really long and I hated it. So I wanted it cut off. And so I had short hair. I was a very pudgy, large child. So yeah, it just got worse. I'd say I was already basically escaping my trauma through food. So I was already in an addictive behavior probably when I was 7 years old, because
Oh,
that's how I would find relief.
and I just realized that you also told me, like me, you started drinking at 11.
Yeah,
But also you told me that that's when the abuse stopped.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and from what I've talked to somebody else that she got into cocaine as soon as her uncle stopped touching her. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And
Yeah,
she got into like, and that's other things have happened. That so I've heard of that where you get into drugs when abuse stops, not during abuse.
yeah.
Then there's the guy I've had on the show that he was being drugged at 5
Mm,
until he was 10 years old by his stepdad and his
fuck.
aunt. So, and that's how the first 2 minutes of the show started because I go in blind, as you know.
Yeah,
So he
yeah.
started with that. I'm like, all right, let's hear your story. Like,
Wow.
50 years old, he got
Wow.
sober finally, and now he's doing really
Good
good.
for him.
He's up in Chicago. He's,
Good for him.
but he's got some crazy stories about some, rituals, like devil rituals and shit in his basement, satanic shit. Fuck, man, meth is crazy.
Man,
Meth's a hell of a drug.
people, that's the thing I say about, addiction. Everybody likes to shame addicts, but I'll tell you what, addicts are some of the strongest motherfuckers on the earth because we're carrying some shit that the normal everyday person couldn't even begin to tote. They couldn't even
And we
begin to
still
carry.
are, bro. We still are.
Exactly.
Because we're hearing
Yeah.
about it today. Like a lot of my family are normies, right? So a lot of my family, my brother, my sister, my mom and dad, we're all really close.
Hmm.
None of them have ever had any kind of problems with, addictions to drugs or alcohol. They can
Yeah,
barely watch or listen to my show.
I
Like if
get it.
they're listening or watching right now, text me that you heard this because guess what?
Yeah.
I won't get a text because the subject matter to them is so tough that
Yeah.
they can't get through, hearing the stories that, and it's not like, and they understand that I'm going to keep putting it out there. I'm not making this content for them,
Right. Right.
and that's the whole point of this. Not everybody can watch us or listen to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the people that are still struggling, guess what? They can hear this shit.
They
They
identify
are the
with it.
ones. They're
Yeah,
the
they're
ones that are
carrying it
watching.
right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're carrying it right now. And listening to us talk about this stuff and not being afraid to talk about this stuff is what gives them also the ability to say, well, I'm hearing a horrid story that is kind of like mine, or either mine's not that bad. I can, whatever it is. I mean, trauma's trauma and we all have it, and it's each person's, just as important. But I think when somebody can hear someone else share some shit that's really hard, I didn't open up and tell anybody. After the day my mom said she didn't believe me because the doctor said it didn't happen, I
I'm with you.
never spoke about that again until I was probably in my late 20s.
Because why
And
would you even waste your
right,
breath?
right. And also I felt like it made me look weak to the people I was with. Like I was identifying as a lesbian at that point. And I needed the females. I liked very feminine females. And I needed them to know that they were safe in my hands. And if they knew that I was unable to keep myself safe, then I couldn't keep them safe. And I didn't want them to look at me in any kind of strange way. It
And
carries, you carry it, man.
and the irony of that, LC, is what's really crazy to me, because today you would be looked at as the stronger person for getting through what you got through.
Absolutely.
But we're so fucked in our minds and addiction that everything is our fault. We are the weak
Yes.
person anyway. That
Yes.
no matter how it really looks, it's that thing of how there's always a positive to a negative, right?
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
always on the negative side of it.
Yes.
It's that thing of you're finding all the negatives, but really the
Yep.
positive side to you getting through that is you're stronger because of it. Look at you
Yes.
still standing that you can talk about
Yes.
these things. You can
Yes.
help other people with your words. If Martin
Yes.
Luther King didn't want to fucking help with his words, how many people wouldn't be quoting him
Right.
today? You have to
Absolutely.
use your words because you don't know who's going to hear it and take it and
Right.
run with it. There's
Yeah, man.
still things I heard from people that, they're not activists, they're not social media people, but they've said one sentence to me over and over
One
that I'll never
thing.
forget. That's always
Yeah.
sticks with my mind. And
Yep.
that's what's important. That's why we talk.
Yeah.
That's why we communicate, why we
Yep.
network. That's why we recover out loud.
Absolutely, man.
So,
Absolutely.
and you're in your late 20s, but from my math, if you didn't find out what trans was until mid to late 90s, that would have put you in your mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you started transit? Well, I'm curious. We'll get there. How old were you?
I was 44 years old. I've only been transitioning for 3 years.
Hey, look at that, Jill. Then that means you
I,
guys are spot on the
I
same
know.
fucking age, mid
I
40s.
know. Yes. Yes. And I always say I could have never began transitioning without my recovery. So it's like my recovery and my transition story, they run neck and neck because
Were
I
you in women's
used
only meetings?
no, I didn't do meetings when I came back to recovery this time. So in 2010 and 2011 and 2012, I had some clean time, but I didn't have any recovery time. Like
But
I
still, man,
didn't
you look good for
do
three
anything.
years. For three
Thank you.
years, you look good.
Thank
That
you.
yeah, I'll give you
Thank you.
that right now because like I would have guessed at least 10.
Well,
You know
thank
what I
you.
mean? Yeah.
I think that in this case, the female to male people who transition, that we have a lot more blessings in that the hormones really do a lot of the work.
It's
For male
true
to
because
female, they have to do a lot more work, and so they're always my heroes, man. Every time, I'm in a
and I
room
do
full
I,
of
I
male
do
to
know somebody
female,
and
a
she's
hero.
probably even listening, and Emily, if she's listening, I'll shout her a name. She's I think 42 or 43 and she just came out transitioned.
Oh, good.
Transitioning
Bravo.
and like,
Bravo.
her wife is completely supportive and everything like that and it's awesome and you
That's
know
amazing.
but yeah, exactly. I see the struggle that she's dealing with too. So I know exactly what you mean when you say like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're the ones that's like, oh, you're the heroes. Like
Yeah.
this what because
Yeah.
like for me, like for you were already like done with not worry about having kids anyway. Like that
Oh,
shit's
yeah.
like done.
Yeah.
Like I know like a dude that has to just had a hysterectomy at 21
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
transition and
Yeah.
it's taking a toll on his body
Oh
and the
gosh, bro.
recovery process is that it was like a 6 to 8 week thing and it's a rough
Yeah.
and for you at
Tough.
45 it's like oh this shit was going anyway. I was
Oh
done with
yeah.
that part. I was done with that
Yeah.
anyway.
And I was really blessed because I ended up having to have that stuff taken out, man, back in like 2010 or 2009. So all that, because one of the weirdest things about me, and I think this is what a lot of the general public doesn't know about, and I think a lot of trans people don't really know this either, because unless you have a specific genetics test, you'll never know unless you physically show. I was born intersexed, but I wasn't born intersexed enough to where my genitalia was so mangled or presented that the doctors did anything. And I'm so grateful for that, because so many times when children are born intersexed, then the doctors make the decision upon what this child is going to present as. And I say 10 out of 10 times, it don't work. Like they sew a little vagina on there, and then this person's like, I'm a boy, like,
Yeah, they're
you
gonna
know.
guess. Yeah, it's not for you to decide.
Right, it's not, and I'm so
Yeah,
grateful for parents now that are becoming more awakened to who their children are and what their role actually is, in their lives, that they're willing to decide, to see what this child's going to become.
I started laughing because I realized, like, I remember we grew up in a time where, like, you couldn't even pick your religion.
No, yeah,
Like
right.
you were born and your parents were like, you're
That was
Catholic, you're
it.
Christian. You
That's
couldn't
it.
even pick your religion, bro,
Nothing.
and
Nothing.
you couldn't pick shit.
No.
You're like, no, I'm not
No.
Catholic though. And like, no, yes, you are, motherfucker. You're
Yes, you're
Catholic.
Catholic, and you're
So.
wearing that Garanimals outfit. I don't care what you think. Yeah.
And now, 35 years, I was born in mid 80s, so like now and now when people are born, it's like, you have a lot more
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah. They don't even know how lucky they are, man. You got so many flipping choices now. We had
Yeah.
no
And and
choice.
and there's and we have meetings here, at our meeting center for LGBTQ. We have a big community for
Good.
LGBTQ, and
Outstanding.
we even invite the youth, and it's
Good.
crazy. There are so many transition, even we live in the middle of nowhere in the mountains in PA, and
Oh,
I say
wow.
we get like 7 or 8, 13 to 15-year-olds that come
Oh,
every
that's
Thursday,
amazing. That's
and
amazing.
half of them are transitioned already, and they
Beautiful.
them and they change. And the first time they were all there, we were all like crying, like just so happy, like to see it.
Yeah.
And
It's beautiful, man.
but the one girl, not the one girl, like the one guy that comes, the father, one of the fathers, he comes, and he had
Oh,
said, like,
wow.
he just worries, and I totally get this, and he worries that they don't know how hard it really is.
That's why I
They
like to
can,
mentor them.
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of the teenagers now, they have a lot of what they have. They can be open with each other in school
Yeah.
and dress the way they want to dress and say the things they want to say because of you going through the front lines years ago.
Yes.
It's,
Yes.
I've had, how Jill, my friend Vince, there's a lot of people that have been on my show even that were, gay. Like my friend Franklin that's been on my show twice. He was
Mhm.
the first person that was really like gay in our school, like out
This
about it.
episode is sponsored by MJ's Progress Not Perfection Meeting Center Association. We are in our meeting center where we do all these meetings for mental health and addiction. I can do this podcast anywhere. I can do this at home. I can do this in a closet. I can do this in a basement. It doesn't matter. All I need is somebody else to talk to about addiction and recovery. What I can't do from anywhere is help people with their addiction and their mental health problems. So if you can help out, we do have a Venmo, we have a Cash App, we have a PayPal, we have an address you can send a check to, and all the money that gets donated goes towards rent, goes towards keeping the lights on, and goes towards keeping the internet on. So please, if you can give $5, $10, $20, it doesn't matter. Anything you can is so appreciated. And if you are a local business, if you're a national business, whatever, and you want to be a part of what we're doing, you can reach out to me and we can talk about how you can be a sponsor. But I'll let you get back to the episode.
And where even on my show, he said, like, I was told I was gay before I knew that I said I was gay. Like that's
Yeah.
like
Me
everyone
too.
was just like,
Yeah.
no, like, Franklin, you're gay, right? Like, you're gay. Like, but everyone liked him. He never got
Yeah.
picked on for it. He was,
Wow.
he did Michael Jackson down the hallway, and he had like a little shtick, and everyone liked, and he had
Love
and
that.
I was like, bro, you had hearing aids and you were a skinny kid. Like, the wind's gonna not, no one was gonna hurt you. And so but that's the thing, is like,
Great.
he broke down those barriers by being that only out kid in
Yeah.
school. My friend Vince
Yeah.
being the only out kid in his school that was on my show, he broke down those barriers for the kids now, that like, and
Yes.
and let's and Glee and
Yeah.
Glee really tore the
Yeah.
wall down for
Oh,
everybody
yeah.
else.
Yeah, that
Everyone
was
was
the
hitting the
bulldozer.
barrier in the
Yep.
2000s and the 90s and
Oh,
2000s.
yeah.
They were knocking on the
Oh,
walls.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
2009 and 2010, Glee hits the screen, and then the barriers just get pulled down, and
Yep.
it's in your living room, and you're like, "What's trans? What
Yep.
is this?"
You're absolutely right. If it weren't for the gay 90s, man, we could not have all that we have. I mean, it was, I often say, even though, identifying as a lesbian was close to, it was where I felt most comfortable. and I just, I think about being gay in the 90s, and I'm so grateful that I was, because, it was a
Like,
amazing,
oh, you were like Ellen?
yeah,
Like,
it
is
was
that's what
exhilarating.
everyone said to you, right?
Yeah.
Everyone probably.
Oh yeah.
How many times did you hear if you had a dime, like, oh, like
Oh my
Ellen,
God.
you're gay like
Yep.
Ellen?
Just like Ellen. Just like Ellen. It was an
I
amazing
can only
time, man.
imagine.
It was an amazing time, just feeling so empowered. But what I always like to do when I mentor trans youth you know, is to make sure that they do understand that there's going to be this time, because there's not only a physical transition, there's an emotional transition. Your brain, so let's just go into some science right now. For, say, for a female to transitioning to a male, your brain structure actually physically changes, and there are going to be things about yourself that maybe you didn't realize that you had an affinity for until you lose them. I was an amazing, I started doing live recovery videos 4 years ago, and I wanted there to be something for people in their hour of need, and I thought there's got to be something, and so I started doing these live videos and just talking about my journey. As I was talking about that, my biggest thing was, you got to heal your root causes, man. Like, you got to heal your root causes of addiction, or else you're always just laying in wait for relapse. It just takes one thing to happen, you're in relapse. About three years into that is when I had healed the trauma, I had healed the sexual stuff, I had healed and forgiven, and I was butted up against this one thing. My son was graduating high school. I couldn't turn my head from the trans thing anymore. I just had to explore it, and so I did. One thing that was not, and I shared that, and I've shared that continuously and I lost a lot of followers. I mean, before I started really having noticeable physical changes, we were reaching 40,000 people a day on Facebook. Now it's like starting over from scratch, because you lose people, and that's okay, because I'd rather stand as my authentic self. But also, what was happening is there was no one there to to explain to me how the emotional changes were going to be, how the things that you like are going to change. The way you speak is going to change. Males and females have a different speech structure, and how they draw vocabulary. And if I've been in a female brain and was a public speaker for 44 years, now all of a sudden I got to relearn how to find words. It's not like you, who's been in your male brain and can speak just like that and find your words. Now it's changing. There's this period of time, just like in recovery, where you start making some physical changes, but you're not quite passable yet. So you're going through puberty, your face is greasy, you got zits everywhere
Oh,
as
I
a
was gonna say the acne.
44-year-old. Oh, the acne's disgusting, man. Those big, ugly, painful teenage bumps you'd get, man, you just need an ice pack for it. It was ridiculous. But you're going through all that shit and you're not passing. So you have to use the bathroom, and you come to this place where you're standing in front of these two doors, like female or male. Where am I not going to get beat up? Like, am I too male to go into female?
Especially in
Especially,
Alabama.
yeah. And now I live in North Carolina, bro. And
Oh,
this is a
dude.
big fight now.
You know that. When did you live in North Carolina? Because I lived in North Carolina in 2015 and 2016
I was here,
during
bro. I was here,
during
bro, during HB2.
yes, I
During
was
the whole,
there. And actually, okay, where are you at in North Carolina? I was in Durham.
I'm just outside of Wilmington.
Okay, so
So,
I was in Durham, which is kind of it's kind of split, right? It's
yeah,
kind of liberal,
yeah,
because of Duke. It's the only reason why is because
yeah,
of Duke.
yeah.
And I lived downtown, so like
Oh, okay.
I walked to like Brightleaf Square was where I hung out, and that was the main part of downtown.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was an alcoholic at the time,
Mm,
and I mean 6 nights a week I was at the bar, like I had my own stool. And,
Gotcha.
you know, I was protected at the bar because of how much money I spent. My fiance had just committed suicide.
Oh
So
man.
I was like spinning out of control at that point, and just I needed to drink it away because not even
Yeah.
drugs could do it. I needed to drink it away. So because I was looking for fights too, you know what I mean? Let's be real. I was looking for problems,
Yeah.
and so I fought about this at the bar all the time because I would find the people that I would want to find. I would find that person that I want to argue with over a
Yep.
cigarette. I want
Yep.
to find you, and I'm going to make sure you understand my point of view until you're going to leave here hating my fucking guts. You
Yep.
know, and that's how I
Yep.
was that entire year. And it culminated for me up until I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan. I'm a huge
Mm,
Pearl Jam
yeah.
fan. And finally, I was going to see them live. And it was on April 20th, 2016. And I'm a
Yeah.
pothead, and 420 is my day, bro. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, awesome. I'm going to see them on 420. This is going to be amazing, right? And they canceled the show the day before.
Oh shit.
And they canceled the show out of protest.
Yep. I remember. I
They were
remember now.
they were protesting, you know, the state of
Yep.
North Carolina, and they were not going to help North Carolina make any kind of money. And
Yep.
here's all your money back, and we all got a refund. And I had never felt so much disappointment, and at the same time, like gratitude, and just
Yep.
I was so happy and proud. I
Yep.
was like never so happy to be a fan, but I
Yeah.
was so upset as a
Yep.
fan because I wanted to see them so bad.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
man.
so I remember it was 2016, and that bathroom controversy was wild in North Carolina. So when
Yeah.
you said Alabama, I'm thinking North Carolina already, and it turns out we were in the same state during that shit.
Exactly, exactly. And that was before I transitioned, and I did not even understand it as deeply as I get it now. Like, like if I'd have got it then like I get it now, my gosh, I would have screamed from every rooftop because it's hard, man. I mean, when we're talking about if I have to go to the bathroom, I'm committing a crime by going in the bathroom that matches how I look. And if I go into the bathroom that matches my still gender or my, let's say, my birth certificate, I'm going to be ridiculed and likely to be beat up there too, because when the women come out and say there's a guy in the bathroom, that husband's coming in and we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And it leaves human beings, when we talk about trans people, they have, one of the largest just kidney diseases and bladder infections. A trans person goes through, several bladder infections in a year, man, just because of this issue. It's so important. And I know that a lot of my community really boycotted and wanted to cancel Dave Chappelle. But I really kind of liked what Dave Chappelle
Thank
said.
you. Thank you. I'm
I
so
loved
glad
what
you
he
said that.
said, man,
Yeah,
because it's so true.
it is.
You're standing next to the 6 foot tall woman who, what's more confusing? And it makes no sense. And I loved what Dave Chappelle said. I actually felt like he was an advocate,
Yeah,
you know,
I
and
think
by saying that.
I think it's that spectrum of, you know, we were talking about asshole spectrum and predator spectrums and all that
Yeah.
kind of thing. There's also the spectrum of how should I say this? Of when you're left leaning, right? Like, yeah, I'm a liberal person that all for everybody's rights, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a too far when it comes to who you're trying to cancel or why. The
Right.
things that Dave
Right.
Chappelle is saying are profound, and he says
Yes.
them because he's getting your attention because he wants you to listen to it.
Right.
The more he talks about it, the more voices he is given to it.
Right.
And you know, and you don't, and if you're not seeing that, and you got to watch his entire hour for
The
context.
whole thing.
Don't
Yeah.
just watch the 4-minute clip that you're gonna hate, and you're being told to look at this and hate this 4 minutes,
Right.
but don't watch the
Right.
full hour of why.
Right.
And you don't,
Right.
if you don't understand the plight of what he's dealing with as an African American man,
Right.
and comparing it to trans, and how you can get rights a lot faster and a lot quicker, and you can get people behind you, and you can get senators behind you faster for
Yes.
your trans rights and LGBTQ. He doesn't have the LGBTQIA, because if you say Black
Right.
Lives Matter, you say that's a fucking Antifa. You know what
Right.
I mean? But you
Right.
say
Right.
LGBTQ, and they're not saying Antifa. And
Right.
so he makes a
Right.
point.
He
He
does.
makes a valid point, and you have to give him a chance to explain it.
Right.
He is somebody who chooses his words extremely wisely. He is
Yes.
one of the
He
most the
was.
I'm into writers. I'm into comedians.
Mhm.
I was a he's right here, dude. That's Chappelle right here. He's on my Mount Rushmore of
I
comedians.
love
That's
Chappelle.
Seinfeld, George Carlin,
I see Carlin.
Seinfeld, Pryor, and
I see.
Chappelle.
Okay, that's Pryor. All
Yeah.
right.
Those are
Yeah.
my four, my Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah,
And
man.
all of them, they cared about storytelling, but they also cared about how they said their words. George
Yeah.
Carlin cared about words. We know this. Seinfeld is so particular with his words. Chappelle and Pryor just a storyteller, but Chappelle,
Yeah.
he
It's an art.
chooses his words wisely. He just won the Mark Twain Award. You don't just win that shit.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to tell you, I love Dave Chappelle also in that Dave Chappelle gave us an amazing insight into the cis male like mind, like how it's seen from somebody who's not in the body. And I think that that's valuable. And before I did a whole show on my transgender mentor platform on cancel culture and have we gone too far, is because the
I
reason
appreciate that so much.
the reason that I even wanted to do transgender mentor is because a lot of the times people don't stop and hear what we have to say, or allies don't step out because they're so fucking scared to say the wrong thing, because it takes 1 second. And I know this because when I first started transitioning, I was going to a support group in my town in Wilmington. And dude, after like time 3, I was so nervous because, I use the word guys a lot. And I'm sitting in a room full of male to female people transitioning, and I say, I love you guys. And all of a sudden I'm attacked. It's like, holy shit, I'm too nervous to go. And we
Yeah,
can't be like that, man.
you have to understand, you have to listen to people, because it's not what they're saying, it's how they're saying it. If
Mm,
they're misgendering you, but they're doing it in a sense, if you're listening to how they're misgendering you, though, if
yes.
it's your parents misgendering you, yeah, they're probably doing it with an affliction to upset you
Right.
and strike a nerve.
Right.
But if it's
Right.
somebody who is your friend and they misgendered you, but they're talking really fast and they're telling a story, they're probably excited and they're probably not meaning to, and that's just how they always told the story with her
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
And so just give them a break.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are trying. The allies are
Absolutely.
trying,
Yeah.
and you can
Absolutely.
hear that. So if as long as you're listening for it, and that's
Yes.
the thing that I like to talk about, at least at our meetings, is like listen for how we're talking.
Absolutely.
Listen to how people are talking to you. If they're
Yeah.
misgender, if they're pronouns or whatever, and it just they're making you uncomfortable, but it's if they're how they're saying it can't be what they're saying. You have to
Right.
give them a break, and
Right.
because a lot of people, they're trying their best and they
They
don't
are.
know.
They are. And we don't want to alienate people. And it's just like race relations. It's not going to change
Which is what
because
Chappelle
of
said.
us.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not going to change because of us. It's going to change because of the allies. The allies continue to stand up and make their peers feel safer and more, at
And
ease
he
about it.
and he knows more about that, than anybody else. Chappelle, the power of allies, because this is the last thing I'll say about Chappelle is, last November, not this past one before. I think it was 2020, right? When it's
Hmm.
so crazy. I think that was a year and a half ago, right?
Yeah, I know,
But
right?
anyway, so that November, Chappelle found out that his show was streaming on all these platforms, Chappelle show, and he
Hmm.
wasn't seeing a dime for it because he made that deal when he was
Yeah,
18 years old with
yeah,
Viacom.
yeah,
So he didn't own the rights to that show. When they sold it to Netflix and the Hulu and the Amazon, he's not seeing money for that.
yeah.
So what he did was he called up Netflix, who made all the specials, and said, "Hey, this makes me feel bad. Can you take this down? They're not paying me." And
Yep.
and Ted Sarandon said, yeah, man, I got you, and took it down because he wants that relationship.
Yep.
Everybody else, though, told him, no, we didn't make this deal with you. We made it with Viacom. Talk to
Yep.
them.
Yeah.
And so he called Viacom. He goes, hey, you guys aren't the people that made me that deal. And they said, yeah, we're not. So sorry about your luck, but we're not doing anything. So Chappelle said, I'm coming to you guys. And he put out a 10-minute YouTube video. And he put it on his Instagram for 10 minutes. And you watched it, and it was saying, hey, this is a plea to all my fans. Don't watch my show. They
Yep.
will not, don't
Yes,
watch
I
my
remember
show.
that. Yes.
And then I will let you know if they come to me, and when they make a deal, I will tell you when to watch it. And
Yes.
everyone stopped watching. And then 4 months
Yep.
later, he got paid, and he said, hey, guys, I got paid. Watch my show again. It's on these platforms. It's like,
Yep.
he knows the
Yep.
power is
He
inside of the
does.
people that out there and not inside the suits in the office. And that's a
Right.
very creative, innovative thinker to think that
Very.
way.
It's a very wise thing. And, one of the things that I really, so, last year I began to really go through a lot of personal issues, and I was dealing with a lot of hate on the internet. And like I said, my platform had grown, to be rather large, and it looked like the dream was coming true. But at the same time, I was going through all these personal changes, and I thought about Dave Chappelle. When Dave Chappelle walked away, from his show at the pinnacle of its success with the biggest offer that had ever been made in television, but yet he was going through these personal, I found strength in that. And so I walked away. Like, I stepped away because while my personal life was falling apart, I found myself, like happens. And like I said in the last night's episode of my show, it's a human being. It's not a bad person thing when the ego stands up and starts to take control of this. It happens very sneaky. You're going through some shit over here, and us as content creators, we begin to find our worth when we're not feeling important. We can feel important when we feel likes and hearts and those things. And I started finding that I was more dependent upon that, and I didn't feel like people were getting the best of me. And I needed to honor this healing that was trying to take place in my life. And I needed to show myself that I could do this and do it authentic, that I could back away from that platform, handle what I needed to handle, go through that healing, and then come back. And people said I was crazy because it's like I'm starting over from scratch now, but I'm starting from a place of pure authenticity. So I really love Dave Chappelle for that. I understand that. And I mean, like, I love him like I do.
Yeah.
He's a mentor,
Yeah, that
a lot
is,
of ways.
I respect that so much. And all right, so we went on and this is how my show always goes.
Hey,
We
I
went
feel,
just so when did you go from? Were you 18 when you went from drinking to drugs?
I think, yeah, well, I dabbled a little bit in drugs when I was like 12 and 13, but I became like a diehard addict from between the 18 and 19. Like
And
the
what was that
year
drug of choice that you found?
opiates. It was opiates. It started out with like this
Was it
um
heroin?
well, not quite, not yet. It started out with this pain medicine that it was a liquid that I'd gotten when my tonsils was out. And a friend of mine told me, "Oh, you can take this stuff for fun." And I was like, "No, really?" And sure enough, I mean, we went on a road trip and we took this huge bottle of this stuff. And by the time we got to where we were going, I could promise you we were overdosing. Like, I was jittery and like, ugh. But that was the moment that in that feeling, I felt like I always described it as an everything's okay. Like,
Yeah.
this is what happiness feels like. This is what calmness, like peacefulness feels like. And I couldn't naturally get it. I had too much shit going on, carrying too much shit, too many secrets, too many masks to keep together.
Yeah.
And now I had this outlet. And back in the early 90s and stuff, it was
Mhm.
very easy to get those things. I mean, the pharmaceutical companies were just blanketing people with it. Big
Oh my
Pharma
God.
was pushing it,
I mean, the
pushing it, pushing it.
commercials, that's
Oh,
when the sales reps became a thing.
yes.
And that's when it was being pushed and all the doctors off. I mean,
Yep.
it was like a movement. You
Oh,
know,
it
it
was.
was literally a movement.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people watch Dope Sick that watch my show because I've
Mhm,
talked about it a
mhm.
lot, even when it was the first
Yeah.
on. And even now I'm watching like the Dark Ages of the 90s is like a
Mhm.
Hulu documentary. And
Yeah.
my wife and I watched like I think the first 5 episodes so far, like, you know, and you forget about things like the Viper Room
Yeah.
and you know, and how
Yeah.
like the drugs were and
Yeah.
how heroin was and how like things were like and literally like talk about, you know, body image in the 90s. Heroin chic was literally a
Yes.
fucking look that was it popular in the
Yes.
90s.
Yeah, I achieved it, man. I was all of like, 95 pounds, I ended up having my stomach, I had burned these holes in my stomach from having ulcers for so long untreated that I had to have most of my stomach taken out. So within 6 months, I dropped 100 pounds. I moved out to Texas. I was introduced to methamphetamines, had the pain pills going. And then because all my heroes, I'm a musician, so all my heroes were on heroin, that just naturally came in the picture. And within 6 months, I lost 100 pounds and I was bartending at the largest lesbian bar in San Antonio, Texas. It was like I was on top of the stars, man. It was like, this is great, unsustainable. And when I became an addict, all that shit and all those people turn their backs on me. It's like we push the party, but once you lose control, shame on you,
Yeah. How dare
and
you?
how dare you, and so leave us because we don't want to be associated with you. And I was homeless, down and out. I mean, living in my car, living with a heroin dealer, had to jump a train from Texas to New Orleans to escape some gang related shit that I didn't even know I was in until there was a hit on my life. And so it quickly went, like, I quickly barreled out of control when heroin came into the picture. Quickly, quickly.
And yeah,
And
and
so,
like you said, and that was also the thing, like in the mid 90s was heroin, you know,
oh yeah.
because that's when it was reintroduced. And
Mhm.
that documentary does talk about that. Like that's why they talk about where Kurt Cobain, obviously, but you know, a lot of musicians besides him were getting
Mhm.
bad with heroin. And
Oh
not even
yeah.
musicians, but actors. And then when they're doing it, it's
Yep.
making it look cool for
Right.
everybody else to do it too. Like, you know,
Right.
not to say you weren't a famous musician, but you know,
Right.
that's the difference
But that's your
whenever you
heroes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and for me with comedians even like Sam Kinison and like
Yeah.
people in the 80s and 90s, like you think of those and it was heroin and like Chris Farley, you know,
Yes.
I'm looking at
Love
John
Chris
Belushi's
Farley.
signature on my wall. I have a, you know, a thing
Love.
like, but still again a
Yeah.
hero and you think you need to follow their path. So
Absolutely. It looks
and I
glorious. It looks glorious.
how long
They're
did
like,
you stick around San Antonio before you left?
oh, everything really, really fell apart for me in about 98. I went down to New Orleans for a little while, and then I just couldn't stay away, and I went back to San Antonio. Things got even worse, and then I had this girl that I had a relationship with on and off, and I always like used to date normies. Like I there couldn't be two of us fucked up. Like somebody had to keep our shit together. And so she had graduated law school, and we had this, long lost love kind of story. And I saw her again in a bar, and I was at the end of my rope. Like I was shacking up in this seedy hotel room where I had overdosed like the night before. It was really weird. It was weird that I remember all of it. And I saw her, and she was moving to a little town called Victoria, Texas. And I just went with her. Like it was just like, you want to go? Sure, let's go. And the next day I was in another town. And that's where I didn't realize, like, so none of, in all that glorifying they did of heroin, they never told you how sick it made you. Like I never realized how fucking sick it was. So as soon as we get, of course, to Victoria, I'm sick as a dog. And so I go to the doctor and I tell him all the symptoms I'm having, and he prescribes me pain pills. So, and in that time, they didn't tell us we could be addicted to them. I had no idea that I could really be addicted. Still, even though I had started out with them, I still didn't know that you could be addicted to doctor prescribed medicine. And there I was. Of course, it helped. It was a miracle. It completely went away, but I completely lost control. I was hiding this from, this girl I was with. I thought I was, but I was doing I was hiding pills in my socks, bro. I was hiding pills in these cabinets in the bathroom. I mean, it was like fucking hell, just a full-time job
Yeah.
chasing down these pills with no insurance, no money, couldn't hold a job for shit, because when you get up sick, you're not going to work,
No, yeah.
It was a hard, but it had been my life to have secrets. It had been my life to have all these big, deep secrets. And I remember just being so stressed out. And then finally, I think it was the year the Twin Towers went down, 2001, that we just I did find MAT, and I had found, methadone to be a help. But back then, the methadone that they used was the kind that produced a high. So I was really, I got out of control with that because the programs back then, they didn't really offer much in the way of let's help you. Oh no, here's just a legal place you can come pick this up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you think you need to go higher? Okay, sure. Let's go higher. I mean, to the point where I couldn't even stay awake. It was worse than heroin had ever made me. But so we ended up, we broke up, and I went back to Alabama. That's where I'd go back to dry out or hide out to my grandparents' house every, so often. And I went back, and I tried my best to be like clean and sober. My grandmother tried to have me committed to a mental hospital because again, I'm going through this sickness, these wild emotional ups and downs. They don't know what's happening. I still really don't know what's happening, man. It's so
Yeah.
weird. Like
Yeah.
I just wasn't as aware as I am now of what was really happening for me. And so, I would go back and forth to the MAT programs and found a few good ones, but I was still just carrying so much of that shame and guilt from my past that I felt like I was a broken human being. Like I just felt like, what would I do sober? Like there weren't any examples like they are now. That's why I'm so grateful for you and all of us that are speaking out about this, because we didn't have examples back then. You had old grungy drunks, that chain smoked cigarettes and drank coffee all the time and talked about how shitty life was, and you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, exactly. That's
you
that's
know,
that's all. And
that's
you're
it.
absolutely right. There was no social media that you could go on and see any kind of like what recovery was. And
No.
on TV, let's be real, they weren't showing,
Oh no.
like they were showing Requiem for a Dream, but they weren't
Right,
showing recovery,
right,
you
right,
know.
right,
And they want it
right.
because no one wants to see that other side of it. They just want to
Mm-mm.
see the dark side. That's the entertaining. We're
Right.
entertainment to them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Believe that.
Scarface, they, yeah, he doesn't make it out, I guess. That's still it's a bad example. But still, like, again, you don't see the recovery. And whenever
No.
there's only like Mom,
Mm,
that show nails it.
yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
say to my
So
wife
true.
and I are watching it for the first time, and like
Yeah.
we're like on season like 6. We're almost done. It takes us forever to watch something because our
Yeah.
attention spans, like,
Oh yeah.
we get
Yeah.
there's so many times after a long day we get in bed. It's like, do you want to watch something new or zone out? And it's always like, yeah, let's put on Bob's Burgers and zone out
Yep.
for a couple
Yep.
hours.
Yep.
And
That's
that's our night, you
yeah.
know. And we don't watch shit new,
Yep.
So
No.
it's so hard
No.
for us to watch new shit because we don't have
Yeah.
for us to both be on, like, to both have the attention span at the same time is rare.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Especially ever since you got diagnosed with MS, it's even harder. So,
Wow.
you know what I mean?
Just
Like,
that I get
and
it. It's
oh, right,
tough.
okay, yeah, she just
It's
got
tough.
diagnosed in August. Her older
Oh, man.
sister has it as well, so at least she has somebody close to her that she can talk to
Yeah.
about everything.
Good.
But you know,
Good.
it's finding the right medicines right now. It's
Yeah.
been tough, and the self-conscious part of it that comes with it, you know,
Yeah.
about the things she can't do anymore and how her
Oh,
legs
yeah.
don't work any, and it gets all in your head. She's only 38.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
So yeah, we're you know, but still, we're not even thinking about drinking or using. It's not even
Right.
it's so
Right.
weird.
It's
And
amazing.
talking about, like, you know, just for today, Mountain Over Molehills is coming up.
Mm.
And you know, it's so funny that like early in recovery, it was like, you didn't do the fucking dishes, and like that would like freak me the fuck out. Like in rehab, if someone didn't
Oh
do
my
dishes,
gosh.
like
Yes.
that was like the mountain of the day, is someone
Yeah.
didn't do the dishes right. And
The
now I
chaos.
have an actual mountain of MS, and it's like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't even think about drinking or using.
Right. Right. It's
It-
amazing, man. It's fucking amazing. Right? It is
you know,
fucking amazing. Like
you
the
know,
last year, like I started when I got into when I started my recovery program. So like I knew that after I had that 9-month relapse where my son was in the other room, I'd just taken a hot shot to the neck. I'd just come out of, that was the year before my big talk with my son. I just walked out of the jailhouse. We were living in my mom's house, and her husband hated lesbians, and he hated that we were there. And we had a son that was, you know, he had gained 100 pounds in a few months, and we learned that he had something called Cushing's disease, which was a disease in adolescence when they are stressed. They have an overproduction of cortisol, and so it causes them to gain a lot of weight very quick. And we were watching that happen to him,
I
and
wonder what could have stressed him out so much.
exactly, because we thought we were hiding this relapse from him, but the whole energy, man, the energy in the
Was he like
house.
12, 11, 12?
Yeah, he was
That's
12 and 13. Yeah.
such a perspective, such like an age of like, you don't even know they're watching you
Oh
age,
yeah.
where
Oh,
like I feel like by 12 they know how to hide, they know
oh
where
God.
they know where the creeks are.
Yeah.
And because I
Yeah.
remember being 12, and then that's the age where you're like, you get good at listening,
Oh yeah.
you get
Oh yeah.
good at not being seen when you, and
Yeah.
you know that too. You know,
Oh
that's
yeah.
like when you start sneaking out. I don't know if you ever snuck out of your house. I snuck out all the
Oh
time.
gosh.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And my bedroom was the third floor. So for
Oh
me to
God.
sneak out, I would have to go down my attic steps, go past my parents' bedroom, and then down those steps. You know, so like it wasn't an easy thing. So you had to know where the
Yeah.
creeks were, and you had to do a
Yeah.
bunch of dry runs, a
Yeah.
bunch of practice runs to make sure you get the doorknob just right. You don't want the doorknob to fuck you up either.
No.
You got to put the
No.
doorknob all the way back on the lock too, because then if my dad goes to the bathroom and sees off the hook, I'm
Right.
caught.
That's it.
You
That's it.
know,
That's
so
it.
that's the
Yeah.
those that's the I think I was 12 or 13 the first time I snuck out. So,
Mhm.
but that's when you start being
Yeah.
able to like to be in the room without anybody noticing.
Yeah.
And my parents weren't alcoholics. You know, my
Yeah.
parents weren't drinkers. They would only drink when it was a party, right? So
Mhm.
I had to be extra sneaky. So like I can imagine for your son to really be able to see what was going on, and for you to be out of your
Yeah.
mind and not even realize you were being listened in on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he would hear the typical, drug deal conversation where it's like, yo, I need to get 12 of, those trees. I mean, all this bullshit, code that you think you're so smart, at. And then, it's his mom and me in the bathroom, together for a whole hour,
Yes.
whispering and getting pissed off with each other. That's too much water, and, shit like this. And then all of a sudden we're up and gone at 10 o'clock at night. Oh, we're running to the store for 3 or 4 hours because the plug never shows up. And, it's like, and then we're sick. God forbid we go a day where we can't get anything. And
And
now
then you're
we're in the
both sick at the same
mood.
time.
Right. Like we don't even come out of the bedroom. We're like, feed yourself. And yeah, so he was definitely, and then not to mention the pressure that, was happening between, with my mom and them, because her husband didn't want us there. And that's tense. And he feels that, and he knows it.
And
And
to
so
know you're not
so
wanted.
much.
Yeah.
Yes. It was a sad thing. And that was
How's he
my
doing now?
Oh, he's an amazing 22-year-old kid. I mean, he's out in Seattle. He's a really, really good kid. I mean, he's got a
Such a
great
cool
heart.
city. That's such
Yeah,
a cool
yeah,
city. Like, you
yeah. I'm
know,
proud of him. He
yeah,
he took off, and he went to places he wanted to go, and that's all I ever wanted him to do is,
good.
and that was why I made that decision. I was like, I can't, either I gotta leave here and just leave his life, and because he was my stepson, so like he's
Yeah.
my wife's biological child, but I had been in his life since he was 4, so I had always been his dad, and
Oh yeah, my
so
wife's dad is the guy that was like her stepdad,
yeah,
for
yeah,
like 4 years. She
yeah,
has a
yeah,
stepdad that's been her stepdad for like 20 some years, but whoever she calls dad is this guy who was her stepdad from like when she was 2 years old till she was like 7,
it's amazing.
and he's still in her life to this day,
That's
you know.
beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful because to be a step parent is it's almost sometimes a thankless kind of position to be in, and it's a strange
My
position.
kid's
It's
my
hard,
kid's
but
7. Yeah, I
yeah.
came out he was 5 when I met
So
my
you
wife.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I wasn't around for, he was born premature, and it was like and she had to have, she can't give birth anymore because of how traumatic that was and that kind of thing. And
yeah,
so, and I know that he didn't talk to her, he was like 2, but he knows sign language because my wife learned and taught him sign language at like 8 months old. So
sure.
like so he's still, he knows sign language even to this day at 7 because of that's how he communicated at first. And so like I heard of that plight that they had, but still when I entered, he was 5. And
Yeah,
I'm the kind of laid back person, as you can tell, like you can tell I'm a laid back person.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like I don't scream, right? And that's just like it's not even a rule, it just I don't do it. It does not have an effective thing. My dad never screamed at me because he knew it wouldn't have been effective. And I understand, yeah, military, yeah, you scream at somebody and they react, but it's not going to be effective for everybody, especially not
yeah.
emotional people.
Oh yeah,
And this kid's an emotional kid that will cry easily. And so it's a lot easier for me just to sit down and talk to him.
yeah.
So
That's
I'm
probably
glad I met him at 5
yeah,
because he can comprehend the words that I'm saying to him. And I'm like, Dominic,
yeah,
what are you doing? Can you just
yeah,
tell me out loud what you're doing and how ridiculous it sounds? Let's listen to it, buddy. Like I'm so like practical with them that it's
yeah.
like it throws them off.
I love it though. Like I love being a stepdad. Like
Yeah, me
I
too.
'cause I was never going to be able to have children of my own. I didn't my parts in that way because of being born intersexed didn't actually work, and I wasn't going to do that anyway. Like
Yeah, I
I couldn't
never had.
imagine
Yep.
myself pregnant.
Yep. I never had
No.
plans either, and that's why my wife was like, she was worried, like when she met me because I'm 35 and she's 38. But when we met, I was 32 and sober. She's like, you're not going to want to start a family now that you're sober and all that. And my first fiance was my childhood best friend, that took her life. So,
Oh,
and when she was sick, she was bipolar and schizophrenic, and she always told me she never wants to have kids because she's so afraid that the kids will have her genes.
mm,
So,
yeah.
I was already set on not having kids in my 20s with my first
Oh,
fiance.
oh,
And my wife said she's only grateful because like I'm such like of a comedian at the end of the day that like I wanted to have like I'm the fourth in my family, right? That's why I'm JD.
oh,
My dad and my grandfather, my great grand, we're all Gerald the fourth. I'm the fourth, third, all the way up. So everyone's like, "Oh, you're gonna have the fifth," and I was gonna do something different. My son's name was gonna be Sir William Dilks the 17th. Because you can write any Roman numeral you want on that thing. No one's checking it at the door. You know, so I wanted his first name to be Sir and his middle name to be William, and only for like so that I could know that he was in school and his teachers were saying like raise your hand, sir. Like like I don't even need to be there for the joke. Just know when it's happening. Is the payoff to me that he's going to be respected. He could be a king one day
I love
because he walks around. What's your name, Sir William? Like, what the fuck does this guy say his name was? My dad
just
hates me. That's what my name is.
love it. I
So
love
my
it.
my wife's like, I'm so glad that I can't have a boy with you because like I know you would have talked me into that name because you would have got my head about how good that name really is and how I could call him Will or whatever. and you just want to call him sir in public. Like, no, you know that running joke, like, oh, sir, like, Mister's my father, like, I want to do, like, no, sir is my son. Like,
That's great.
like,
I
that's
love,
like, I wanted to do that just
that's
for that
awesome.
running joke for this kid's
I love
life,
it.
and
I
that's
love
why
it.
and that's why I'm a stepdad, and that's why I should always be a stepdad and
And the
not
moral of the
produce,
story is
and that's why I should not produce any children of my own, because that's the shit that will come on the birth certificate.
that's
And in
great.
30 years, that kid will be on a podcast talking about my
Right,
dad hates me because.
right. This podcast became My Dad Hates Me. Everybody, all of us join up.
My dad hates me because he wants to be a comedian in real life, but like, is not have a. I don't care about a stage. I don't care about those laughs from a stage. I care about what I can do just to inflict an emotion
Yeah,
and like,
yeah.
and just get a rise and then make people laugh. Like, I remember, like, when my brother and I lived in a loft together in Durham. It was a loft style because
Mhm.
it was like an old cigarette factory converted, the old L&M factory converted into apartments. So like, my brother has a great cackle, and so I would send him shit just so I could hear him in the other room go ha. Like, and that's what I needed, was that, like, that cackle. And that's, and I do that. Like, we're so into pop culture in our family, where like, we'll get into these conversations about actors and who's in what, and which actors in which movie. But I'll play dumb with them to fuck with them, just to, like, and I'll go like with something obvious, like, like a Ferris Bueller. I'm like, that's not who that guy is. Who you like? What are you talking about? Like, and like, what? No, that's not Matthew Broderick and Ferris Bueller. Like, you guys are crazy, and like, and they're gonna get so mad at me that that how do you not know this, JD? And I'm just fucking with them because I can keep a straight face and not
That's how
break.
my wife. Oh, that's how my wife is, man. Like her face
Go
never
stone
ever
cold too. Yeah.
completely. You'll never even know.
Is she good
And
at
then,
manipulating?
oh my gosh,
Because the
man.
ones that can keep a straight face are the best manipulators,
Oh
because
yeah.
we're never breaking we know how to hold our facial structure.
Oh, you can believe. Like if they're
Oh, I
and
live it, buddy. I live it.
my wife is one of those people that if there's something she doesn't want you to know, you'll never know it. Like she's always been my ride or die. I remember being at the grocery store one time and I used to have rageful anger, right? And I was at the grocery store and this person did something to me and I just reached through the window and just bam, like right on the chin. I jumped in the car. I call my wife a message and I'm like, I'm on the run. Like I just punched the shit out of somebody in the parking lot. My wife, as soon as I come home, she's like, back the van up. She's standing out there waiting on me. I throw the van in reverse. We're hiding the license plate. We're hiding it. There's my wife. Like my wife has always been that ride or die chick, no doubt. Like she's
Yeah.
got me, and she'll never crack.
But I can bet you, just from having that in common with her, I bet you though, I'm the kind of person that, if I want you to know something's wrong, but I don't want to tell you something's wrong, I'm going to make sure you can tell by my face that
Oh yeah.
something's wrong.
Oh yes, without a doubt.
So that's the other thing that manipulators are good at, is not only hiding it, but showing it when we want to show it.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
what we're saying is, please talk to me,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
As much as I'm
So,
saying nothing,
like, it's
please.
hard for me to say it out loud. I need you to start this. I need you
Yeah.
to say what's wrong.
I desperately need you to like call
Yeah.
me out on this and let's discuss it. Yeah, my wife has been through that. She went through a whole lot of trauma. I always say that my wife of this is our 17th year is the only other person that had been through, so much trauma that I had ever really been with and dated and like again watching I don't see it always. I see it more now in myself of how much I've been through, but I get really, really emotionally impressed when I look at my wife and just how stoic when I hear about her life, when her mother would leave them and how she had to take care of her brother and sister. And she's not the oldest, she's the middle child, but she got them ready for school and she washed their clothes with no electricity and she did all this stuff. I just see, the strength. And when she had her addiction to heroin, it was the first time that I felt like she was almost taking care of herself in a way. Like, even though it's a negative way to take care of yourself, it was the first time that she had put herself first, if that makes sense. It's a fucked
Yeah.
up way to see it,
But
but
no, it totally makes sense because, it's, and I hate to equate everything to TV, but I watch a lot of TV. But if you watch Shameless,
oh,
did
I
you watch
don't.
Shame? Okay.
I haven't watched
So
that one yet.
that would be a lot of relation to your wife. Because the oldest daughter, and I know that she wouldn't relate in that way because it's the oldest daughter, right? But the oldest daughter takes care of, like, 5 or 6 of her brothers and sisters. And then when they're all old enough to where they don't need her anymore, then she flies off the rails
Yeah.
and becomes like her mom and dad that, abandoned all of them. But because she felt abandoned by them, she felt, now it's okay, I guess I'll go get fucked up on coke and drink.
Yeah. Well, my wife, and it's crazy that you bring that up because that's exactly what happened. So, she took care of us. Like, she took care of me in that, she washed all the clothes, man. She did all the house stuff. I mean, I at one point in the year 2008 and 2009 had gotten so sick because I lost both of my grandparents and my brother in that year. Um, and I gave up on life and I was given 6 months to live, man. I had no, like, my muscles atrophied and everything. She would pick me up, carry me to the bathroom, bathe me. I mean, this woman took care of me.
Was it your
She took care
grandparents, like grandmother and father, or same or difference? Or the only reason I is
of them as a couple. It was,
okay.
yeah,
I
grandparents.
And that was 2009 for you. In
Yeah.
2012, in June, my studio is named John Johnson Memorial Studio. It's my best friend.
Mm.
And he passed in a car accident in June 2012. But in September, 23rd, actually, on my grandmom's birthday, let's tell you, on my dad's mom's birthday, my mom's dad passed away. And then 2 weeks later, on my brother's birthday, my dad's dad passed away. So we
It's
lost both
crazy.
of our grandfathers within 2 weeks. And this
Wow.
was 2 months after my best friend passed. And in that September, my brother's really good friend from high school passed away suddenly.
That's
So,
wow.
like, we both had, like, but unfortunately, I was an addict, and fortunately, my brother wasn't. So I spun out, and then my
Mhm.
brother, got better. He dealt
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my wife was that person for me because I'm gonna blow your mind. So right now, so what happened, on December this was happened in 2000 and it was 2008 is when I lost everybody. 2009 is when I got the diagnosis. But on December the 27th of 2007, out of nowhere, my best friend in the world, my brother, like, this man was my brother more than any blood kin I had. Like, he was 33 years old. He'd come in from working, his heart exploded at 33, and it took my knees out from under me. Less than, let's say, January the 12th, my grandmother, who basically half raised me as well, January the 12th, she died suddenly. Like, nobody knew these people were going to die. They weren't sick, nothing. And then June the 12th of that year, my grandfather passed. 6 months to the day that she passed, he passed. And my grandfather was my best friend. And all of that loss in that, like, I just spun out so crazy. Like, it devastated me in
June
ways
12th
that
was also the day my friend John passed away.
it's wild, man.
6 6 12 12.
As soon as I heard you
Um,
say that June 12th, it was like, phew, that's
yeah.
crazy.
I did say that. I
Yeah,
couldn't
well,
remember.
you said June 12th of somebody
Okay.
else passed.
Oh
But
yeah, that was my friend John. Yeah,
mhm.
it was June 12th, 2012. And you know what's crazy is that day started with death for me, and it wasn't John's. Do you know
Wow.
who else died on that day? That's like more of a prominent figure. It
Just
was
remind me.
the real Henry Hill. Um,
Oh, okay.
Goodfellas.
Goodfellas, Henry
Yeah,
Hill.
the
Okay.
real Henry
Good.
Hill. Yeah, he was, always on Howard Stern a lot,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
as you can tell by me loving podcasts, and Howard Stern's like an idol to me.
I love
And he has been for a very long time. The way he
yeah.
can get people to open up, the best compliment, and I've heard this compliment a few times, and it makes me feel so good every time. Was I felt so comfortable opening up to
Yes.
you. That's the
Yeah.
best compliment I can
Me
ever
too.
get,
Yep. That's me
and
too.
because it reminds me of Howard,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. That's it.
people all the time when they're talking to him, you always hear them say the words. They always say first. They always say, "I can't believe I'm about to tell you this, but."
Yep. Yeah.
You know.
That's so true. That's so fucking true.
And so he's
Yeah.
always been an idol to me.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I forget where we're even going because I went on that little rant, but that's how it happened. So, um,
Hey, it's the same way, man. I do my show. I just can't edit. So I like do this for an hour live in front of people.
again, I'm about that emotion in the room.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
with my brother, when I would want to hear him cackle, I can edit an entire clip of a promo right next to my wife and add the music to it because I use the lyrics on YouTube, so I know which part I'm using.
Oh, that's
So
great.
I can like make the video and then send it to my wife, and then when she's watching it for the first time, it's actually the first time that I'm hearing it.
Oh, that's
And there's
nice,
been
man.
many times that I've cried because I've like nailed it.
Yeah.
Like
I
I've
love
been
it. I
because this
love it.
song was so powerful and like I chose
Yeah,
it so
mate.
wisely, and I've
Yeah,
watched it
man.
100 times to edit it, but I haven't heard it yet. And she always puts the volume up, and that's how I want to hear it for the first time and have it affect me.
It's
But
exciting, though. It's
yeah,
exciting that you can get that excited because for how long did you think you were a piece of shit? You know, and that whole addiction time, you think that you're just a piece of shit. And then when you see that you've got talent at something, that you're an artist, because that's an art,
yeah,
and that you're an artist and that you can make something that is so profoundly touching to others, dude. I mean, yeah, I
it's
get it.
funny, yeah, because before I was a comedian, I did stand up comedy, and I've talked about this before. And I was a comedian that didn't know how to laugh anymore.
Mm,
I was a comedian in addiction, so I was broken.
mm,
And to the point where when I was like 2 3 weeks sober, when I was in rehab and I started laughing really hard to something, and I felt my stomach hurt for the first time in a really long time from laughter. And then I realized then in that moment that every time that I was in the club and I heard a funny joke, I laughed, but I laughed with my head. It
yeah,
was me being a smart enough person to hear a joke and go, "Oh, that's funny."
yeah,
Laugh at it, you fucking idiot. Ha ha ha,
yeah,
ha, and then
yeah,
you laugh with the crowd. But
yeah,
I wasn't laughing, and I'd
right,
forgotten how to. And and it's the shame of a comedian that doesn't know how to fucking laugh. Of
yeah,
course, it's like the plight
yeah,
of a
yeah,
comedian, how broken we
absolutely.
are. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was my first goal when I was young, man. I loved comedians and I loved stand up, and that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I think that, there's so much content in transitioning that at some point, I've decided that I'm going to write my transitioning stand up, like
yeah,
there's so much. And but
and,
but
and and you should. And there's plenty of creators in the community too. One of my favorite ones, and that's a comedian. I don't. Do you follow Darcy Michael, or is his name Darcy Michael?
I don't know.
Um,
Look.
Darcy and Jerry. Darcy and Jerry is their names. Look up
Okay.
Darcy and Jerry. They're a gay couple in Canada, and Darcy is a comedian, and he has ADHD, and he has a podcast called like High School Stories or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And but they are so funny together, and he's like just like this pothead husband comedian, and he's always like forgetting things, and they're always doing like this TikTok bit of like things my husband forgot part 9, you know what I mean, or think my
Gosh,
husband's a pothead
yeah.
because of this. And like all of a sudden he ordered pizza from 2 different places and didn't realize it, like that kind of shit. Like, but they're so funny together. But
Love it.
he's a comedian though. And
That's
when
all.
quarantine happened, a lot of comedians, they find
Yeah.
other avenues,
Yeah.
whether it was TikTok or podcasting. And
Yeah.
for me, I found my way of combining comedy with our pain of,
Yeah.
we laughed a lot on this episode, you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
And,
Oh yeah.
and that's kind of the point, is that we
Yeah.
find laughter in the hard times that we go through. And you'll come back and tell more stories,
Oh
because
yeah.
there's more stories to tell. We didn't even get into meat and potatoes of a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of the point of when you can talk to somebody for a while, is come
Yeah.
back and let's talk some more too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, I appreciate you coming on and you know what I mean, learn about
Man.
you're doing amazing. Where can your podcast be found at for now? Until you might be changing things up, but for now, where can they find you? And
Well,
I'll put
for
the
now,
links in the description.
okay, for now, I'm really working on growing the YouTube platform. So I want, I really want to push to that. So, youtube.com/recovery soul food. But it's also available on anchor.fm/recovery soul food, iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, and that's it. That's where we are for now. And we're doing the transgender mentor on YouTube as well, but that's a different channel. But we're not sure exactly where that's gonna go. I want to bring some funny into that while we're teaching into that too. So yeah, let's stay connected with some guests, and I'd love to have you on the Recovery Soul Food podcast if you're up for a
Oh,
Saturday night
100%.
live, man.
Yeah.
And so yeah, check us out there. We're also on Facebook. It's Recovery Soul Food, Instagram recovery_soul food,
You have a
and
link tree too.
yeah, there's a link tree. I
Okay,
think
I'll
it's
make
in
sure
my
to have
bio on
that.
Instagram.
So whether you're watching or whether you're listening, go in the description and there will be the link right there at the top to all of these platforms. So
Absolutely.
thank you again so much, Elsie. It was so nice getting to know you.
You
I'm
too.
free. I'm free
Okay.
whenever you want on a Saturday night.